Imagine this. You're in court, the tension is high, and a police officer is convinced they've got you cornered. But then your lawyer steps up, cool as ice, and turns the entire case upside down. The officer's confidence? Gone. The judge? Totally on your side. These are the moments where the law is put to the ultimate test, and those who think they're untouchable get a rude awakening. From parking tickets to full-blown criminal charges, these lawyers didn't just defend, they dominated. In a world where power often tips the scales, there's one place where everyone, no matter who you are, is supposed to stand on equal footing: the courtroom. But what happens when those who are meant to uphold the law fall short of it? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving into 8 unbelievable cases where cops who thought they had it all figured out got completely owned by lawyers who knew their stuff. If you love stories where the underdog comes out on top, you're in the right place. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get right into these epic courtroom showdowns. Case 1. The DOI checkpoint that went horribly wrong. The case of Warren Redlich. Ever been through a DOI checkpoint and felt that nagging suspicion that something just wasn't right? Warren Redlich, a Florida-based attorney, knew that feeling all too well. Redlich, an experienced lawyer with a background in constitutional law, had always been critical of how DOI checkpoints were conducted, often operating on the edge of legality. So when he found himself stopped at one of these checkpoints, he decided to put his knowledge to the test. Redlich had a plan. Knowing that officers at DOI checkpoints often rely on drivers inadvertently waiving their rights, he printed a flyer that clearly stated his rights, including the right to remain silent and not to open his window. As he approached the checkpoint, he displayed the flyer on his car window, refusing to roll it down or engage with the officers directly. The officers were confused and visibly frustrated. Redlich's flyer essentially rendered them powerless. They couldn't legally force him to roll down his window, and without signs of impairment, they had no grounds to detain him. After a few tense minutes, the officers waved him through, defeated. Redlich's actions were more than just a clever legal maneuver. They were a bold statement about the importance of knowing your rights. His encounter went viral, inspiring others across the country to use similar tactics at DOI checkpoints. Redlich argued that these checkpoints often violate the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. In many cases, he was absolutely right.
People are uncomfortable with the idea that police can just stop you for no reason. And that's, if you're not comfortable with that, this is a good way of handling a checkpoint. There are good cops and there are bad cops. The purpose of this flyer is to protect innocent people from bad cops.
His challenge to the system didn't go unnoticed. Redlich's actions sparked a nationwide debate about the legality and ethics of DOI checkpoints, with many questioning whether they were truly effective or just a tool for easy arrests. Case 2. The traffic stop that backfired. The case of Philando Castile.
Sit down and watch this because it is shocking. It's shocking dash cam video. It's been released of the fatal police shooting of Philando Castile last year. Few people had seen the video. It was shown in court during the trial of Officer Geronimo Yanez, who was acquitted of the killing of Castile.
Our second story takes us to Falcon Heights, Minnesota. It's a case that's become infamous, not just for the tragedy involved, but for the legal and social ripples it sent across the United States. Picture this. It's a warm July evening in 2016, and 32-year-old Philando Castile is driving with his girlfriend Diamond Reynolds and her 4-year-old daughter. He's pulled over by Officer Geronimo Yanez, allegedly for a broken taillight. What should have been a routine traffic stop soon turns into a national tragedy. As Castile calmly informs Officer Yanez that he has a legally registered firearm, panic sets in. Seconds later, Yanez opens fire, tragically killing Castile. The incident is shocking enough, but what happens next sends it into the annals of history. Diamond Reynolds, in a state of shock and desperation, live streams the aftermath on Facebook. The video goes viral and the world watches in horror as the situation unfolds. The public outcry is immediate and intense. But while the incident sparked a national conversation on race and policing, it also set the stage for a critical legal battle. Enter Glenda Hatchett, a seasoned attorney and former judge, known for her no-nonsense approach and deep commitment to civil rights. Hatchett, alongside her legal team, took on the daunting task of representing Castile's family in the quest for justice. Hatchett and her team immediately saw the case for what it was: not just a tragic mistake, but a clear violation of Castile's civil rights. They argue that Officer Yanez acted recklessly, escalating a situation that could have and should have been handled with calm and professionalism. Hatchett meticulously pieced together a case that highlighted the officer's lack of justification for the use of deadly force, pointing out the systematic issues within law enforcement that allowed such a tragedy to occur. Yanez was eventually acquitted of all charges in the criminal trial, a decision that sparked outrage and disappointment across the nation. But Hatchett didn't stop there. She pushed forward with a civil lawsuit leading to a $3 million settlement for Castile's family. Case 3. The arrest of Sandra Bland, a legal showdown in Texas. Our next story is as tragic as it's infuriating. Sandra Bland, a 28-year-old African-American woman, was driving through Waller County, Texas, when she was pulled over by State Trooper Brian Encina for failing to signal a lane change. What should have been a minor traffic stop quickly escalated into a confrontation that would end with Bland's death in a jail cell just 3 days later. Bland was calm but firm in asserting her rights, questioning why she was being asked to step out of the car. This clearly irritated Trooper Encina, who threatened to light her up with a taser. Bland was forcibly removed from her vehicle, arrested, and taken to jail on charges of assaulting an officer, a charge many would later argue was completely unjustified. 3 days later, Bland was found dead in her jail cell, with authorities quickly ruling her death a suicide. However, the circumstances surrounding her arrest and subsequent death sparked nationwide outrage, leading to protests and demands for answers. Bland's family, devastated and searching for the truth, turned to attorney Cannon Lambert to seek justice. Lambert wasn't just fighting for Sandra Bland, he was fighting for every person who had been mistreated by the criminal justice system. He filed a wrongful death lawsuit, arguing that Trooper Encina had violated Bland's constitutional rights from the moment he initiated the traffic stop. Lambert's strategy was to meticulously pick apart the police procedures, the mishandling of Bland's arrest, and the suspicious circumstances of her death. Lambert didn't hold back in the courtroom, using every legal tool at his disposal to highlight the systemic issues that led to Bland's death. He pointed out that the jail had failed to monitor Bland properly and that there were significant inconsistencies in the official account of her death. His arguments were bolstered by evidence of similar cases where police misconduct had gone unchecked. While the lawsuit resulted in a $1.9 million settlement for Bland's family, the broader impact of the case was far-reaching. It led to the passage of the Sandra Bland Act in Texas, which aimed to improve the treatment of individuals in custody and address racial profiling by police. Case 4. The infamous McKinney Pool Party Incident, a lawyer's quest for justice. It was supposed to be a fun day at the pool, but in McKinney, Texas in 2015, a pool party turned into a scene of chaos and fear. A group of teenagers, mostly African American, were enjoying a day out when neighbors called the police, complaining about rowdy behavior. What happened next would spark outrage across the nation. Responding to the call, Officer Eric Casebolt arrived on the scene and immediately began detaining teenagers. But it was his treatment of Dajaria Becton, a 15-year-old girl, that caught the world's attention. In a shocking display of excessive force, Casebolt violently threw her to the ground and pinned her with his knee, all while brandishing his firearm and other teens to try to help. The Jarius family turned to attorney Kim Cole, a fierce advocate for civil rights, to seek justice for the traumatizing experience. Cole wasted no time in filing a federal lawsuit against the McKinney Police Department, alleging excessive force and racial discrimination. She argued that Casebolt's actions were not only unjustified, but were also a clear violation of the Jarius' constitutional rights. In court, Cole dismantled the police department's defense, which claimed that Casebolt was acting in the interest of public safety. She highlighted the disproportionate use of force, the racial undertones of the incident, and the long-lasting impact it had on the young girl. The case resonated with many as it echoed the broader issues of police brutality and racial profiling in America. The lawsuit was eventually settled for an undisclosed amount, and Officer Casebolt resigned from the force. While the settlement brought some closure, Cole continued to push for broader changes in police training and accountability. Case 5. The ultimate legal showdown, the case of Michael Morton. Our fifth story today is one of the most heartbreaking and yet triumphant legal battles you'll ever hear about. Michael Morton was wrongfully convicted of his wife's murder in 1987 and spent nearly 25 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. But thanks to the relentless work of his legal team, led by attorney John Rayleigh and the Innocence Project, the truth finally came to light. Morton's case was a tragic example of how the system can fail. The prosecution had withheld crucial evidence that could have proven his innocence, but it wasn't until Rayleigh took on the case that the full extent of this injustice was revealed. Through DNA testing and tireless investigation, Rayleigh and his team uncovered the real killer and exposed the misconduct that had led to Morton's wrongful conviction. In 2011, after spending 24 years behind bars, Michael Morton was finally exonerated. The case was not only freed an innocent man, but also led to significant legal reforms in Texas aimed at preventing such miscarriages of justice in the future. This case is a testament to the power of the law when it's wielded by those who refuse to give up on the truth. Case 6. The journalist who wouldn't back down. The case of Barrett Brown.
A U.S. court has sentenced journalist Barrett Brown to 63 months behind bars and a fine of nearly $900,000 for having loose links to the hacktivist group, which calls itself Anonymous.
Sometimes being too curious can land you in hot water, especially when your curiosity leads you to expose government secrets. Barrett Brown, a journalist and activist, found this out the hard way when he was arrested in 2012. But what the authorities didn't count on was Brown's tenacity and the fierce legal defense that followed. Brown had been investigating the controversial activities of private intelligence companies and had shared a link to hacked documents online. The government came down hard on him, charging him with a laundry list of crimes that could have put him away for over a century. But his lawyer, Jay Lederman, wasn't about to let that happen. Lederman argued that Brown was being targeted not for his alleged crimes, but for his work as a journalist. He pointed out that sharing a link to publicly available information was not a crime, and that the government was overreaching in its attempt to silence a critic. After a long and grueling legal battle, many of the charges against Brown were dropped, and he was eventually released after serving a reduced sentence. This case wasn't just about one man's freedom. It was about the right to investigate, to question authority, and to hold those in power accountable. Barrett Brown's story is a powerful example of how the law can be used as a shield against governmental overreach, especially when you have a determined lawyer in your corner. Case 7. The case of the plant waterer, when gardening turns into a legal battle. Sometimes the dumbest legal battles come from the most mundane situations. Take the case of Adrian Schoolcraft, a former NYPD officer who was arrested for watering his plants. Yeah, you heard that right. What followed was a bizarre legal saga that exposed serious issues within the police department. Schoolcraft had been a whistleblower exposing corruption within the NYPD. But after he was suspended, he kept a low profile until the day he decided to water his garden. The police, likely looking for any excuse to harass him, showed up and arrested him on the spot. But they didn't count on Schoolcraft fighting back with a lawyer who was ready to take them to task. Norensberg argued that the arrest was nothing more than retaliation for Schoolcraft's whistleblowing activities. He filed a lawsuit against the NYPD, accusing them of unlawful arrest, false imprisonment, and a host of other violations. The case dragged on for years, but in the end, Schoolcraft was vindicated and the NYPD was forced to settle the case. This case might seem trivial at first glance, but it highlights a much deeper issue: the lengths to which some in law enforcement will go to silence critics. And it shows that with the right legal strategy, even the most absurd charges can be turned into a powerful victory for justice. Case 8. The case of Kalief Browder, a tragic miscarriage of justice.
Now we have an Eyewitness News exclusive, a travesty. A young boy thrown in jail as a 16-year-old high school sophomore. Now, more than 3 years later, this young man is free. Criminal charges completely dropped.
Our final story today is one of the most heart-wrenching tales of injustice in recent memory: the case of Kalief Browder. At just 16 years old, Kalief was accused of stealing a backpack, a charge he vehemently denied. But instead of getting a fair trial, he was sent to Rikers Island, one of the most notorious jails in the country, where he would spend nearly 3 years, 2 of them in solitary confinement awaiting trial. Khalif's ordeal began in 2010 when he was arrested without substantial evidence. Despite this, he was held on $3,000 bail, an amount his family couldn't afford. As the months turned into years, Khalif was subjected to horrific abuse by both inmates and correctional officers. His case was repeatedly delayed, and he was pressured to plead guilty to a crime he didn't commit. But Khalif refused, maintaining his innocence throughout his imprisonment. Enter Paul Prestia, the attorney who would eventually take on Khalif's case. Prestia was determined to expose the systemic failures that led to this gross miscarriage of justice. He filed a lawsuit against the city of New York, arguing that Khalif's prolonged pretrial detention, the abuse he suffered, and the denial of his rights to a speedy trial were clear violations of his constitutional rights. The case brought national attention to the conditions at Rikers Island and the broader issues of mass incarceration and racial injustice in the United States. Despite Khalif's release in 2013, the trauma of his experience had taken a severe toll on his mental health, and tragically in 2015, Khalif took his own life. His death sparked widespread outrage and became a catalyst for criminal justice reform in New York City. In 2017, the city of New York settled the lawsuit for $3.3 million, acknowledging the horrific treatment Khalif endured. But more importantly, Khalif's story ignited a movement that led to the eventual closure of Rikers Island, and it continues to inspire efforts to reform the criminal justice system. While Khalif Browder didn't live to see the changes his story would bring, his legacy is a powerful reminder of the importance of fighting for justice no matter the odds. And that's a wrap. 8 cases where the law prevailed and cops found themselves on the losing side. These stories are more than just legal battles. They're reminders of the power of the Constitution and the importance of knowing your rights. From DUI checkpoints to unlawful searches, and from wrongful arrests to defending free speech, these lawyers prove that justice can and will prevail when we stand up for what's right. What do you think of these cases? Have any of them inspired you to learn more about your own rights? Let us know in the comments below. And if you've got more stories of legal triumphs, share them with us. We'd love to hear them. And next time you hear about a seemingly open and shut case, remember, there's always more to the story. And sometimes the truth isn't just surprising, it's game-changing. If you enjoyed this deep dive into legal drama, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a good courtroom battle, and of course, subscribe for more stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.